Greetings, BArcadians, and welcome to another edition of Gaming News Weekly with your hosts, as ever, me Tabs, my good friend, channel buddy, Rich, Zello Rich.
Hello, how are you all doing?
So if you're joining us for the first time, we put this out every Friday at 5 p.m. UK time. We cover off 3 of the juiciest stories we could find in the games industry in any given week, and then we finish off with a rapid fire everything else round with all the little bits that we couldn't feature in the main. But before that, we talk about what we've mostly been playing in the week just gone. So please smash that like button now if you haven't already. It really helps to support the channel. So Rich, over to you, my friend. What have you been playing this week, or have you been having a break in preparation for a big game drop tomorrow in our world?
Yeah, I don't actually think I've played anything this week. I'm just trying to think. No, I don't think I've played anything this week. I've actually been watching quite a lot of videos related to Horizon. I've been trying to catch myself up with the story because I didn't fully complete the first one. I've read quite a few reviews that say it's really good to have a real good knowledge of the first game, so I've been trying to watch some videos of that. So that's taken quite a bit of time, and a few other bits.
Give us a handle on it, mate. Give us a handle on the story. What do you know?
Yes, I mean, it's complicated. It's not something you can do a whistle-stop tour of. I mean, some of the videos I've watched that try and explain the story go on for like 40 minutes. It's quite convoluted, but in essence, it's something that, to be fair, I don't know, some people like to play it, but we as human race engineered a way of circumnavigating our own downfall, and then that's what this AI is, and then it all went a bit Pete-tong, and there was fail-safes built into that, and that all went wrong, and then human intervention has caused that to be sort of weaponized, and
Halo's a clone.
Yeah, there is that, of course. Interesting. I actually, once I'd sort of got to grips with the full story, I was a bit disappointed that I didn't complete it through. So that was a bit of a sad note, but I guess that's my own fault. I should have jumped on it. But anyway, enough about me. What have you been doing, dude?
Just 2 games for me, really. So Destiny 2. Haven't played a lot of Bowser's Fury this week, but I think I did at the start, maybe Sunday, Monday. Really good fun. And it's a bigger game than what I thought it was, to be honest. I've just unlocked a new area. And yeah, I really like the design of that. It's definitely a bit different and keeps evolving and changing. Like I say, some frame rate issues, probably because of the open world nature of it, but yeah, good fun. And then Destiny 2, just caught in that progression cycle again, for better or worse. I've not spent any money on it yet, 5 monetization, so that's good. But it's just a nice one to just grind away on without thinking too hard about anything. And the combat's really good fun. But mate, shall I move us on? The first story today, I'm sure everybody wants to hear about this one because it's out today, BArcadians, if you're watching this.
Yeah. You
should probably have it in your hands if you've ordered it. But we've got a Horizon Forbidden West review roundup. So Metacritic currently sitting at 89.
Decent.
Android Central had this to say first of all. So we do a cross section. We pick 3 reviews and we try and get 3 reviews spanning the average sort of ratings, if that makes sense. Android Central 100. This is what they said. Horizon Forbidden West is superior to its predecessor in almost every way, and Zero Dawn was already a fantastic game. Guerrilla Games takes huge narrative risks that pay off big time, setting up Aloy's greatest threat yet, and further developing her relationships. The gameplay is likewise just as excellent, with incredibly responsive and fun combat alongside a vast open world to explore. Great stuff. Mate, do you want to take this on?
Absolutely. So Push Square give it a 90 or a 9 out of 10, and they have this to say on it. Overall, Horizon Forbidden West is a huge improvement on its predecessor. The map is diverse and full of stunning sights, characters and conversations are so much better, and the already great gameplay is enhanced with new weapons, more options and better melee. The story doesn't have quite the same element of surprise as the first game, but it still builds upon things with some daring twists of its own. Any minor quibbles we have melt away when the game's firing on all cylinders. It's a gorgeous, wildly fun action RPG, and there's nothing else quite like it.
And then lastly, we've got GameSpot, who 80 or 8 out of 10. And I think this is kind of the lowest. There's a few other outliers below this, but this seems to be like as low as the more popular outlets gave it. So here we go. Overall, though, Horizon Forbidden West does a lot more right than it does wrong. It might be jam-packed with stuff to see, do, know, and remember, but when its many systems come together, it can be a beautiful, exciting, and delightful open-world experience. The story that drives you through the frontier is often well told and does well to centre actual characters rather than audio logs. And while the map is littered with icons, it's much more often that they're fun, skillfully crafted diversions than a random busy work to fill a checklist. There's a huge amount to do and see in Horizon Forbidden West, and the great majority of it is worth doing and seeing, thanks to strong writing, great visuals, and some marked improvements to the series' underlying ideas.
That's a really weird one, isn't it? Because I know that's just a cross-section of the review, but they're really like positive about it. And obviously they sort of say there's a few like niggles in there, but then they give it an 8 out of 10. That's a weird one, that. I don't understand that, but
I think you have to read between the lines. So they say it's jam-packed with stuff to see, do, know, and remember. So that kind of suggests it's a little bit laborious in terms of overwhelming, perhaps. It requires you to remember a lot from the old game. You have to learn all of the lingo. That's what kind of comes through to me, maybe a little bit.
Okay.
But let's jump in, mate, to what our thoughts, feelings, excitements are. I know we're in slightly different camps, because for me, obviously I was really excited about this. All the stuff we've seen, all the trailers running up, it was just getting me more and more amped. I just thought everything we're seeing is just fantastic. It looks like they've doubled down on everything. It was already a solid game, Zero Dawn, but they've doubled down on it. The combat's thicker, more depth to it. There's the glider thing like Breath of the Wild. And I thought, as long as they carry on this kind of entity that they're stacking throughout the rest of the game in the world, I think we're onto a winner here. And I think I'm still really excited, don't get me wrong. Still got it on pre-order, planning to play it to death. I think I was really hoping we'd see 9 out of 10s, 10 out of 10s across the board, whereas it does feel like there's a good wedge in quite big outlets and publications of 8 out of 10s, 85s out of 100, whatever. And I've seen stuff to suggest that I think some of the problems I had with the original, maybe it hasn't quite outgrown. That makes sense. So we know we've got this climbing model that's now kind of hybridized. So it's it's not quite a free climbing model, but it's also not quite as restrictive as the first one. So it's progress, but it still feels like it's, at least in some of the reviews I've read, a little bit problematic. And then it also, exposition wise, I'm hearing some people say they love the story, others are saying Aloy's a bit dull in it. And there's still these kind of expositional dumps at times, rather than the sort of kind of story delivery, that we see in the likes of God of War, for example, which is so natural and off the cuff. You almost don't notice it while you're playing the game. So yeah, I mean, let's throw over to you, mate. I won't bore you with my my observations, but suffice to say, it's dulled my excitement a little bit. And I said to you, didn't I, earlier in the week, I'm still excited, but I'm less so. But give us yours in contrast, mate. What are your feelings?
Yeah, so I think I'd said a few weeks ago I was feeling concerned about how big this game was going to be and would I feel like really overawed by it. But I actually feel really good about it, actually. I think I'm hoping that it will feel good, and some of the things we've heard about how long it takes, like mainlining the story and and doing some of the side quests might be more like 40 hours rather than what I was thinking would be a lot more like 90 or 100, which at the moment, in terms of timescales within my life, I think that's great. So I'm super excited for this. Looks absolutely gorgeous. I think there's a lot of people saying this is probably one of the best visuals we've ever seen, which is really good. You know, I want something to show the power of next gen off really, you know, in my face. I want it to look amazing, so I'm excited for that. So yeah, I'm really excited for this, I have to say. I mean, I've read a few things. I've watched a video actually. You remember when we played Breath of the Wild, Tabs, and we'd seen, oh, actually, if you play it in this way, it's a much better experience, like turning off lots of the head displays and stuff like that. And I actually read that there's a similar kind of scenario within this new game of Horizon, that there's a similar kind of thing. You can sort of have a dynamic head-up display, so you're more immersed in the world, and there's a few things you can change, which is cool. So yeah, I am really excited about this. I reckon I'm probably more excited than you are. I don't know why, because obviously you played lots of the first game.
I'm going to give it my all. I'm really scared. I kind of bounced off the story in the first one just because I couldn't, the delivery, I wasn't patient enough probably. And I just worry that if it's delivered in a similar way, I'm not going to be patient enough with this. And I've heard that the first game story is fantastic, but I just couldn't really soak it all up in the way that I would have liked to, and it probably deserved. But yeah, one thing I have heard before we move on, mate, is that the side quests in this are brilliant for the most part. Like, they feel like main quests from other games, you know, they're that well thought out. And I know me and you, we've often criticised open world games when they descend into that sense of busy work. And it sounds like that's not the case here. And that's always exciting, I think, when you're getting pulled on these, you know, peripheral threads in an open world game. And I like to learn about the world in that way, and the culture and the people via meaningful side stories. So I think as well, there's these things called, they're called cauldrons.
Relic ruins. They're called relic ruins, I think. And they're basically going to, well, they sound, obviously I've not played the game, they sound like they're going to be very similar to shrines. So there's like a platforming puzzle where you have to like work out how to progress through the sort of ruin to get whatever the treasure is or whatever. And I think that sounds really, really cool. I sort of instantly thought about shrines from Breath of the Wild, so hopefully they're really cool. But yeah, I think we should move on.
Cauldrons were in the last one, and they were a bit like shrines, and they normally would end in like a boss battle against a big machine. And they wasn't quite as intricate as some of the shrines, because you had like a physics system, didn't you? And the runes, obviously, with Zelda. But yeah, they were definitely cool, and yeah, they look really cool from what I've seen in this new game as well.
Yeah, this is something different entirely, though. I think this relic ruin. This is a new. This relic ruin is something new, and it looks like it's all. There's no enemies in these ruins. It's all a case of moving through and getting to the end goal by deforming, moving stuff, platforming, and that kind of thing. So that's why it made me think of the shrines.
Oh, I'm excited now. Mate, what's this game? Before we move on, we keep saying we're going to. There's some sort of game, isn't there, that you can play in it? Have you seen much about that?
I've seen a few clips of it. It looks like it looks a bit like a turn-based sort of like chess-looking game. I don't know a lot about it, and there's not a lot of detail other than the very odd screenshot I've seen where players are moving characters around on like a checkerboard. I've not seen a lot about it, but it looks very interesting. And from what I've read, in terms of where it's been said in passing, people are like, I'm going to spend a lot of time in this. The chap at IGN, whose name escapes me, was like, I'm going to delve right into that, you know, like it was like a real big like game where you could, I don't know, level up or something. So I don't know whether that's going to be like a blitzball type of game that's within this, so like a game within a game. I don't know.
Gwent in The Witcher.
Exactly.
And to be honest, mate, one last thing from me. I think that's something that's important about these sorts of games. We have to remember that these reviewers, they have to rush through them to get the review out. And it's this sort of game that's so deep and multi-layered. If you do that, you're probably going to miss out on half of the experience. And maybe if, you know, because we're going to take our time with it, I'm going to be forced to. Maybe I'm going to get completely different, you know, vibes from it and perspectives. So maybe I should be much more hopeful and not so, you know, slightly deflated by some of the review scores. But anyway, mate.
Let's move on. So moving on, next up we have got Cyberpunk 2077 1.5 patch details, and Den of Geeks had this to say. Simply put, Cyberpunk 2077 was a mess at launch. The game's various bugs and technical problems left a sour taste in the mouths of many early adopters. Fortunately, CD Projekt Red has been busy patching the game, as well as fending off lawsuits, and Cyberpunk 2077's latest update might have finally produced the kind of experience gamers wanted. Earlier today, CD Projekt Red revealed and published patch 1.5. The update applies to all versions of Cyberpunk 2077, but is focused mainly on modern platforms. Patch 1.5 adds long-awaited improvements such as ray-traced graphics to current-gen consoles, as well as fan-requested changes such as an upgraded NPC crowd AI. The result might not wash away the memory of Cyberpunk 2077 launch woes, but it makes for a good argument to try out the game, especially since the update coincides with a new 5-hour free trial. What better way to see if patch 1.5's alterations finally make the game worth a purchase? And it also includes additional apartments, graphical improvements, combat and AI improvements, driving controls, NPC AI improvements, and it's rebalanced the skills. So I think everyone's quite excited about what this might bring to the game, but I think certainly from reading between the lines, am I right in thinking that people thought this might be a little bit more than it has been, Tabs?
I think so. It's hard to say because the stream video, because there's quite a lot they went over, and I also think they did say, I think in the stream video, they were going to leave some surprises for people to, go back and experience it. Okay. Though until we get like some sort of re-review, I'm hoping some of the outlets will do an actual like re-review of the game, and we'll actually see what they think. But I think technically speaking, it sounds like it's quite positive. We know they've introduced ray tracing in a form to next-gen consoles, and it just seems generally to be a lot more stable, although I think there was some PS4 issues that I read about today when I was preparing this story. So, but I think, that there was a leak that came out, just to address what you said, mate, sometime before this. And although some of those leaked suggestions line up with this, there was also a lot more besides.
Yeah.
So, I think it's perhaps not delivered on our wildest dreams in terms of, we always said, didn't we, mate, it was very unlikely they were ever going to make a game that they advertised in those early trailers and hyped reveals. But it sounds like a solid game to play now. Go on.
I guess the litmus test is, would you now replay the whole entire game with this patch? That's because you were one of the people who arguably you would say were disappointed with the play experience.
Yeah, and two of the main things that I am pleased they've done is the AI, that they've addressed that, and the rebalancing. Because I did a review for the channel, didn't I? And they were two of the things that I pointed out were really, really quite poor, and how unfinished it felt. I think all I would say is, I think if I go back, I'm going to have to start a new file. I don't think I can just jump into my old save, because it's just going to feel all sorts of weird. And it's been so long since I've last played it. I need to get into it all over again.
Yeah, that's the question, isn't it? Would you replay from the start, brand new save file, and see whether the game is better? Is that something like you would go, you know what, this is worthwhile my time?
I suppose I might, mate. The only problem is we've got Horizon Forbidden West from tomorrow, Elden Ring the following week. And do I want to play those first? Yes, I do.
I think therein lies the problem with this game now. So they've potentially fixed this game to a place where everyone can go, you know what, this is close enough to the game that they advertised that I'll get on board with this now. But when will anyone play this now? We've already spoke at length this year about all the games that are coming this year, and Tabs has named two there. Then you go month by month and there's some big hitting game every single month. And unless you have got all the time in the world, which I would say many gamers don't have, that I can't see where you would fit this in either on a first playthrough because you've waited for it to be fixed, or retrospectively like Tabs would on a replay through to enjoy it how it was supposed to be played. I just don't see where you would fit this in.
Agreed. I think that's perhaps a criticism you could throw their way. Why did they choose this window? if they were going to do this, maybe wait for a lull later in the year.
Yeah.
Where they're not kind of stealing time and, because there's a little bit of, for gamers, there's a part of me that says, I would really like to dive back into this,
exactly.
but I ain't got the time to do that. And because it's a bit of a rerun, isn't it? I'd rather play a new game that I'm excited about. So, no, it's good to see though. I'm really eager to see. I hope there's some re-reviews out there, because some of the new apartment stuff, some of the rebalancing I've seen with the skills, it does look like it's finally, you could call it a finished game. So I'm pleased, but yeah, it's just a shame that they've chose to kind of almost shadow drop it at this time.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm sure there's an audience out there.
Do you want to move us on?
I will indeed, mate. Third story today. Nintendo drops a clanger. So this is from BBC News, and this is what they had to say. Nintendo is facing a backlash from fans over its plans to end purchases on older generation Wii U and 3DS systems in March 2023. It means that consumers will no longer be able to buy hundreds of Nintendo games from the past. Instead, gamers will have access to a smaller selection of titles through Nintendo Switch Online. And as this is a subscription service, players will lose access to their favourite games if they do not renew. Nintendo said it's only sales that are ending, so players can still re-download games and downloadable content that they already own, play online and receive software updates on their Wii U and 3DS consoles after March 2023. It also said that Wii U and 3DS accounts will stop accepting Nintendo eShop gift cards from 29th of August 2022, and these funds can instead be added to Nintendo Switch accounts. They will not lose their value. The main criticism aimed at Nintendo is that many games will now be unavailable to purchase at all, as the Nintendo Switch library is much smaller than that of the Wii U and 3DS. There are 300 games from classic systems such as the Game Boy and SNES available on the Wii U eShop in the UK, and 187 classic games on the 3DS. In addition to these older games, there are hundreds of digital 3DS and Wii U games designed for these consoles, which will become unavailable for purchase, in total accounting for more than 1,000 games. So yeah, mate, on this one, we saw something similar, didn't we, with Sony? And then shutting down some of their kind of like legacy stores and content. And obviously that went down like a ton of bricks, causing them to reverse the decision, at least in part. So I think we've seen a similar backlash with this, with Nintendo. We know as well it doesn't contrast well with Nintendo's staunch approach to, piracy. Because it's almost like, they hate piracy because they protect their IP so, zealously. But then it's like, well, if you're just going to remove all these games and access to them, what do you expect? Because we can't play them anymore, and we're gonna we then rely on the physical copies out there, don't we? And that just becomes very difficult because prices are inflated and it's not very accessible for some people. So, but what do you think, mate? What's your take? So there's two sides to this. I think some people say it is what it is. You can't have these things forever. They have to. Things get lost to time. But
I think
what's your thoughts?
Two thoughts on this. I'll be very surprised if they don't roll back on this, just because of the huge backlash they've had on this. And obviously, if they don't roll back on this, and we've already seen, as you've said, Sony rolled back on part of their decision after everyone kicked off about it, then I feel like we will be further suggest that they're out of touch with their fans, which is a further worrying step. But the thing that I don't get on this is, obviously they're saying, yeah, but lots of the games are available to play on the new Switch sort of online service. Well, haven't we already established that most of them are just completely broken? They don't work properly, like the graphics aren't as they appear on the games consoles that they're supposed to play on when they're played on the Switch, like the emulation's all wrong. So it's like, don't play these games that run properly on the systems, now go onto this other system that emulates them very poorly and have a worse play experience. It's like it's take. I don't see how you're giving fans the service that they require, because you're taking away something that works fine, saying this is a better service, and it's awful compared to it. So I don't know, I don't get this. It's weird.
Don't you think though there's a chance that Nintendo will just be Nintendo and crack on, even though there's
100%,
backlash?
100%.
I feel like they're more likely to do that than Sony, obviously, with what they did.
I said to you literally before we filmed this, so obviously at the moment the metaverse is seemingly just the buzzword. Everyone's talking about it. You know, you've got the likes of, I think I said to you, I read that Disney have actually hired people to work out what they're going to do when they come to the metaverse, you know, how they're going to, you know, make sure they're in it. Nintendo have said, oh, we have no plans to be involved in the metaverse at the moment. Like, they're so like, this is what we're doing, this is our lane, this is what we do. They don't like to like travel outside of their lane, but they're gonna get left behind if they're not careful. They've already been left behind on hardware, and now they're making software decisions that seemingly like they're going to get left behind. It's bizarre.
They're not afraid to be unpopular, are they? That's for sure. But you're absolutely right in saying, if they're going to do this, then they need to make sure. Well, they don't need to do anything, do they? But it'd be nice if they had a robust legacy suite of their old games, and like you say, that they put some effort into, and that they're in. Like, I think they are criticised. Their Nintendo Switch Online retro console kind of eShop is criticised because it's a really, what's the word, mate? They've just not put a lot of effort into rejigging them. And they're not particularly faithful and authentic, I think, in terms of emulation. And two, you know, they've not got a lot of quality of life stuff, which you could also add in there because of new technology. So, yeah, they're on rough ground on this one. But, you know, like I say, am I expecting them to U-turn on this? Not entirely sure, mate, to be honest.
I sort of agree. Right,
but
should we do everything else?
Yeah, let's rock and roll on.
Right, so first up, we have got The Last of Us TV show won't now be here until 2023, which is a real surprise.
Hugh Rich is grown before he started.
Really disappointed.
He's looking forward to that.
I was, yeah.
Nintendo has no plans to to pursue, as Richard just pointed out, the metaverse anytime soon.
Just insane. Next up, Elden Ring bosses won't require a trek back to them. From what I'm reading, there'll be checkpoints nearer the bosses, so that unlike sort of Demon Souls and that type of game where you have to trek all the way through the level to get to them, there's going to be a little bit more quality of life, which is really good.
And then we've got Assassin's Creed Valhalla goes full God of War in new Dawn of Ragnarok trailer.
I mean,
I don't know if you had a chance to see this, mate, but it does look very God of War, doesn't it?
I've only seen the still image you showed me. I didn't have time to look at it today, but the name of it alone is just like, oh, that's going down well. Let's jump on those coattails. It just seems awful.
You can play as Odin, so you're a god essentially, and there was even character designs that just reminded me so much of God of War. Anyway. That's Ubisoft. So, mate, that's it for today.
It is.
I think we'll go off and enjoy our evenings, get ourselves ready for Horizon Forbidden West, although I don't think either of us can play it tomorrow. But BArcadians, if you are awaiting that order, it should be with you now. Enjoy. Have a great weekend diving into this new Forbidden West with Aloy and Co. Thank you for joining us this week. Remember, next Friday from 5 p.m. UK time, there'll be another edition of Gaming News Weekly. Tune in, subscribe, ring that bell to keep your finger on the pulse of the channel. And I think, Rich, that's another one for the archives.
Stamped and completed.